I'm Marna, and you have found part 2 of what looks like it's going to be a 3-part series in cultivating yourself as a conscious observer of your thoughts. So check out the previous video. Let's see, should be up here over my head somewhere if you missed part 1, and part 3 will be at the end. All right, so what is it that we are going to do? Physical steps, action steps we can take to start cultivating this conscious observer within ourselves. Now this, if you missed the previous video, the observer is the term we are using to describe the state of consciousness that is witnessing all of our feelings and thoughts. It is not composed of our thoughts. It is separate from our thoughts. And by learning how to act in this state, we can keep from being caught in thoughts that trigger strong emotions. Okay? Okay. So cultivating this mental space is absolutely essential if you're on a spiritual path. Part of what we do on our spiritual journeys is taking a closer look at who we are and being able to look at and address the parts that don't really serve us anymore, the parts that we maybe don't like so much, and in the process reach a point of inner clarity so we can become more blissful in our daily lives, so that we can move forward in an era of acceptance and harmony instead of being caught up in the day-to-day mundanities. Now, there are 3 main areas that we focus on in this: the body, the emotions, and the mind. And all 3 are active all the time. You know, we can't turn our body off, at least not in a healthy way. Please don't try. Yeah. And, dealing with all 3 of these at once can seem a little bit overwhelming, particularly as you're getting started on this journey. So, start off with observing just one at a time. As you become more practiced in doing this, then it becomes easier and easier for you to move back and forth between the 3, and then eventually it gets to the point where you're pretty much in the state of the observer all the time, and all of the other aspects that you're observing kind of run in the background. So let's start with the body. The body is one of the easiest areas to start with in observing it because it's tangible. We can look in the mirror and see what we look like. It also changes more slowly than our emotions or our mind. So here's some things that you can do to develop awareness of your body. Start with the head and work your way down to your toes. Or, do it the other way around if that's more comfortable for you. Start with being aware of each part of your body. Do you have any tension? Is there any pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, pain? Go through and do an inventory. All of you. Does the tip of your nose hurt? Does it feel like a cervix? That's an old joke. How about your ears? Are your ears still attached? Are you sure? Not everyone has attached to your lips. Do the survey of your body. And then, start putting all the pieces together. Observe the body as a whole and where sensations are based. Do you have headaches? Do your shoulders ache from tension? I do that a lot. Yeah. Observe where everything is and how it fits together. Observe your breathing. The breath is the bridge between your physical vessel body and your higher self. And breathing will also show you your emotional states. Tension, excitement, contentment, they all affect how we breathe and what our breathing patterns are like. Observing your breathing can also help you with grounding. When you observe the breath, The tendency is to try to control it, especially if you're tense. So, while this is helpful for relieving tension, spend a little bit of time just observing. Let the breath do what it chooses to do. Don't try to control it. Just see. When there is no judgment of what should be, and instead an acceptance of what is, you have entered the observer frame of mind. And then observe what happens to your body during physical activity. When you're eating, where do you feel the food? Where does it come to rest? Do you have any, heartburn, anything along those lines? When you're exercising, how does your body react? How does your body move? How do you feel the movement of an arm swing or whatever exercise you're doing? What sensations are you feeling, and where do you feel them? How is your breath responding to the rest of your body as you're observing it? These are all components for observing the physical vessel. Remember though, because you're observing it, that means it is not the complete sum of you. You, the observer, exists outside of just this physical form. Once you've gotten your fill of observing your body, then let's go for the next level up. Let's observe the emotions. And this can be a landmine. Emotions are more subtle than the physical body. They're not tangible enough for us to touch them, but they still are prominent enough to control major aspects of our lives if we let them. There are times of extreme emotion and times of neutral emotion, but even in times when you're emotionally neutral, you still have feelings, and you should be aware of what those feelings are doing so they don't suddenly become more extreme. So, ways to develop awareness of the emotions. Practice watching the rise and fall of your emotions because they do tend to be cyclical. Everything in our lives is. So, again, do not judge your emotions. Do not label your emotions. Just observe. What situations trigger your emotions? What makes you angry or afraid? What makes you happy? What gives you joy? Again, don't analyze them. Just observe what is. And then observe what physical sensations are being triggered by your emotions. Do your muscles tighten up? What emotions are triggered if you sit there and deliberately tighten up all of your muscles? What is your emotional response to that? This goes back and forth. We are holistic beings. Every system interacts with every other. Once you've got a handle on observing your emotions, then you're ready to go for the really hard one. And that is the mind. This is the hardest of the three facets to truly observe. It's the least tangible. It's the most interchangeable. And it can be very overwhelming. And then once you realize that your observations started out as your ego self instead of your observer self, you start to doubt whether this whole process is working or not. Don't worry, it is. It just takes practice, okay? So, to become the true observer, to get into the stage of being a conscious observer of your thoughts, you have to move outside of just your mind. Yes, I'm telling you to get out of your head. And there's some practices that you can do to help with that. Observe the flows of your thought. And there are different layers of this. There's conscious thought, then there's the monkey mind, and then there's the unconscious thought. Conscious thought is likely to decrease when you're practicing because your attention's not focused on the outside. So you can kind of filter out that chatter. The monkey mind is what's going on in the background. The monkey mind is the, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? This is likely to actually become more intense as you observe it. And again, this can be a little overwhelming until you get there. Just be easy on yourself. Don't try to push it. Work to surrender to it. Accept that it's there, but don't push it. Once you get past that chatter level, though, then you can start seeing what your deeper unconscious thoughts are. When you still the chatter of your mind, you're giving those unconscious thoughts room to bubble up so that you can become aware of them. And this is often related to desires, compulsions. What do you want? Why do you want it? If you focus on your third eye, which is right about here, right there, then you become aware that there's an energetic movement in your head. And these are the flows of thought, the synapses in your brain firing off. Yes, you really can feel them. It takes practice, but you can do it. Again, take it easy with this step. Do not try to rush yourself through this because all you'll do is give yourself a migraine. Been there. Okay? Now then, after you've practiced all of these methods, and after you become proficient to the point where you can observe multiple areas at once, then you can start seeing how it's all connected. You become aware of the relationships between the mind, the body, and the emotions. So you can start observing, how does one area affect the others? If something has triggered your anxiety, then how are all three areas reacting to this? If you feel a strong emotion, is it triggering tension in the body? Where? Is it triggering certain thought patterns? What are they? Then your mind is going to start trying to analyze all this. And you have to put the brakes on that because that's your ego self. Observe the spiral effect as the thought triggers the next anxiety. And then just accept it and let it go. There's no, obviously you don't want to get yourself worked up to the point where you're being detrimentally affected by all this. But anxiety is one of the easiest forms to observe in all three states. Once you learn to observe it and accept it without feeling the judgment, without feeling the need to analyze it, then you can reduce how it affects you. Again, breathing is the bridge between all of this. So as you are doing this, as you are being the observer, always return to focusing on your breathing. Okay? All right. That's part 2. Next, we're going to get into part 3, which is getting out of your head altogether. All right? So that will be the next video. Come join me there. Thank you.